welcome back, Junior Master Gardeners. My name is Jordan Roney. I am the farmer over at IDEA San Benito, down here in the lower Rio Grande Valley. And today we're at a very special place. We are at Hugh Ramsey Nature Park. This is in Harlingen, Texas, more or less kind of in the center of the city. It's a nature preserve, so it offers about 54 acres of protected and dense wildlife habitat for all sorts of different animal species to enjoy, to make their homes in, and to thrive. And also, it provides a space for people like myself and then you to come and enjoy as well. All right, let's go inside and check it out. All right, so now we're inside of Hugh Ramsey Nature Park, and within this park there's all sorts of species from the animal kingdom that make their home here. There's bobcats, there's armadillos, there's squirrels and possums, dozens of different types of bird species, which we're really proud of down here in the Rio Grande Valley. There's all sorts of reptiles and amphibians, there's fish, and all of these species need, just like you and me, food and water to survive. And that's where our topic of the day comes in, which is insects. Insects provide a vital food source for all of these species, right? So we think of the bobcat, right? It's gonna be eating birds and small rodents that it finds and is able to hunt. Those birds and rodents are gonna be eating different reptiles and amphibians, and those amphibians and reptiles are gonna be eating insects. In addition to the reptiles and the amphibians eating those insects, all the other species that we discussed as well eat insects as well. The birds eat insects, bobcats eat insects, armadillos eat insects, insects eat each other. So they provide a really vital source of food within the cycle of life. So insects provide a lot of food for the ecosystem. You could almost even think of that insects are responsible for keeping us humans alive, right? Because of the role they play within the ecosystem. And so insects can live anywhere. They are part of all sorts of different environments all over the world, right? However, insects do really enjoy warmer, more humid climates that we see down here. So we have a really, really diverse and plentiful insect population down here in the Rio Grande Valley. Far up in northern territories like Canada and even the Arctic, they have different insect species as well. They're just a little bit limited and there's a little bit less of them. Understandably, but unfortunately, a lot of us consider insects to be pests. But they actually, not only do they provide a food source for all sorts of different species that we rely on in our day-to-day lives, but they're also really, really good for soil health, which us as farmers appreciate in order to grow, healthy crops and healthy produce. Different insects are pollinators, like butterflies and wasps and bees, which help in plant propagation, and pollination all throughout the world. And in addition to that, they break things down, right? So insects will eat anything that they see and help break down organic matter, which helps it decompose back into the soil, adding fertility and life to the soil. The point of today's lesson is to teach you all the tools you need in order to identify insects and classify them in which family that they belong. So we're at the nature park, we're gonna go and look for some insects. We're at a really nice spot right now next to some water. There's some tall grass over here, all sorts of dense bush and shrub. So let's go find some insects. We've found our first specimen. We don't know if it's an insect yet. Now, you might look at this and think, oh, that's an ant right away and just disregard it. But scientists and entomologists need a system in order to identify insects or potential insects that they find in the wild. So here we're gonna start with our key and we'll look, does the insect have 6 legs? And by counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it does have 6 legs. We'll move on next. Does it have a pair of wings or one pair of wings or 2 pair of wings? This one actually doesn't, so we're actually gonna skip this and we'll move down. Are the mouth parts for sucking or piercing, or are they for chewing? Now this one definitely appears it's got some chewing mouth parts to it. Is the body thin and narrow, or is the body wide? Definitely thin and narrow. We see a couple portions that are a little bulbous, but more or less it's a pretty narrow insect. Now the next portion refers to wings. This does not have any wings. It has a thin and narrow waist. Its waist is not narrow. Now this one definitely does have a thin and narrow waist. So this is part of the Hymenoptera family. And if we look at the Hymenoptera family, we can see that these include ants, bees, and wasps. And there we go, that's an ant. Not far from where we found the ant that we just identified, we found this little guy. Now, you might see this and think, oh, that's an insect, but using the key that we had just discussed, the very first question on that is, does it have 6 legs? I don't know if you can tell from the camera, but this guy's got way more than 6 legs. So as much as we might look at this and think that that's an insect, it is actually not. These are actually more closely related to shrimps and crawfish that we find in our rivers and oceans than it is to any insects. The only difference is that these guys wandered onto land millions of years ago and evolved to learn to live and thrive on the Earth's surface, and even in really dry or humid regions like we have down here. So this is actually not an insect. It's called a pill bug, but it's actually more closely related to different types of crustaceans. Now these guys, just like bugs, are super important for ecosystems as well. They also help in breaking down leaves and wood and different organic matter and returning that stuff back to the ground. And they also provide food for all sorts of different animals as well. So we've found another potential species. This one we cannot touch, and we want to approach slowly in order not to kind of scare it off. But from the distance that we're at, it does, the first question, does it have 6 legs? And from the position that I'm at, I can see that it does have 6 legs. It has 2 pairs of wings. And then when we're looking at the mouth parts, now it's pretty dark in here. And I can't be certain, but the closer I get, I don't see any chewing mouth parts on that, which leaves that's most likely gonna have sucking or piercing mouth parts. And then the next identifier is gonna be the body. Now, is the body of this species narrow and thin, or is it wide? Now in the video, I don't know if you can tell, but from my angle, it's definitely super, super thin, which lands us on the Lepidoptera family. And if we look over on the right-hand side of the key that I'm provided you with, the Lepidoptera family is going to include butterflies and moths. And from my past experience with butterflies and moths, that definitely looks like one. We've found another species. This place seems to be plentiful of all sorts of different creepy crawlies. Now, this one is very fast moving. I was able to capture it off a little piece of fallen debris from one of these palm trees. And just like the other 3 things that we identified, we want to start with the very first question, is whether or not this thing has 6 legs, right? That's gonna immediately tell us whether or not it's an insect or not. So this one, as I'm looking at it, it's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's got 8 legs. It's not an insect, but it is a spider. It's an arachnid. It's part of the arachnid family. Spiders are incredibly, incredibly important in our ecosystems as well. They eat insects as well. They're the ultimate in pest control. They eat all sorts of different insects, which these are definitely, spiders in general are definitely a farmer's best friend. If you see spiders living in your fields, they're welcome there. We like those in our fields. They eat the different squash bugs, they eat aphids, they eat grasshoppers, they eat all the different pests that can potentially cause damage to our crops. We found another species. I'm fairly certain I know what this one is, but let's go ahead through the motions anyways. So just like the other ones, all the ones we've done before, we're gonna count its legs. Now this one looks to have 1, 2, 3, 4. Only 4 legs, so it's not an insect. But it's something equally as cool. It's a frog. This is an amphibian, which y'all are gonna be learning about in your next lesson with Caitlin. She's gonna be talking about all sorts of different reptiles and amphibians that inhabit Texas and North America and the world. So this is a frog. As you can see, there's this big body of water here behind me. It probably loves that. Frogs also love to eat insects. Insects provide a really important food source for frogs, and in addition, frogs help control insect populations through their consumption. I know on my farm I have a lot of mosquitoes throughout a good portion of the year. Luckily though, there's a very large frog population that lives on and around and near my farm, so they eat up a lot of the mosquitoes that can make working outside pretty tough sometimes. Now, another thing that I kind of wanted to point out real quick too is that when we think of the animal kingdom and then all the species that exist on planet Earth, they're categorized into 2 separate groups. We have invertebrates and vertebrates. Now, vertebrates would be what we see here as a frog, meaning that it has a backbone, it has a spine, right? Whereas insects, crustaceans, the pill bug that I had shown earlier, the butterfly, those are invertebrates. They do not possess a backbone, right? So when you think of the animal kingdom, the next step down from that is separated between vertebrates and invertebrates. The frog here, it's got a little backbone, it's a vertebrate. The spider that we were looking at, it's part of the arachnid family, that would be an invertebrate. So I'm gonna let this little guy go, and hopefully he can go and munch on some of these different mosquitoes and ants and grasshoppers that we see flying around down here. So you wanna get a close up? Awesome, y'all. So for your activity with this lesson, we're gonna make this little bug trap. Super simple to make, and all you really need is a water bottle, or I have 2 examples here, which is a regular water bottle like this, or a cup that has one of these domed lids to it. And ideally you don't want anything that's really gonna be any taller than this, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna dig a hole and we're gonna set this in the hole so that it's even with the ground, okay? That way it sits in there, and then we're gonna leave it overnight. That way it gives plenty of time for different bugs or creepy crawlies or whatever it is that's out roaming around at night to walk across and then walk down inside of the little trap. It's also gonna be really helpful if we put something in there that's gonna attract them. I have a little bit of strawberry trimmings in here from some strawberries that I ate, just the tops, and then I have some melon rind. You can really put anything in here, just not too much of it, because you're gonna wanna be able to see what's in there, and nothing with too much liquid, because we don't want the bugs to go in there and get stuck in the liquid and drown. So I mean, you could put maybe like a banana, like little pieces of banana peel, a couple little pieces of grapes, whatever it is, just not too much, but definitely something that's in there that's gonna entice something to come down in there, okay? And so, like I mentioned, all you need is a little water bottle like this, or if your parents take you to Starbucks or to Stripes and get you a little slushie or something, one of these cups. This is really simple because all you need to do is just flip the lid upside down, put some tape around it, dig a hole, throw some goodies in there, place it in the ground, good to go. You have a water bottle, super simple. You're gonna wanna get help from your parents with this one, because it is gonna require you to cut the top off of the bottle. So just remove the lid, get a knife, or ask your parents to take a knife and cut the top off for you. So we're gonna cut around. Boom, just like that. So take this, put the top upside down, so it's gonna kind of create a little, almost like a trap for the bugs to come in. Get some tape. Doesn't need to be on there super tight because it's going to be buried, but we just want to ensure that, like, you know, the wind doesn't come along and blow the top off or anything like that. So there's your little bug trap. Put some goodies in there, you're good to go. This one I had sitting out overnight. We have a bunch of different little kind of winged gnats in here. There's a spider, I see some ants and stuff like that. And so what your activity is going to be is to make one of these little traps, leave it out overnight, pull it up the next day, and see what you have in there, and use that key that I've provided you with and that we talked about to identify any of the species that you have in here. Whether it's an insect or a spider, or maybe you're gonna get something cool like an amphibian, like a frog that we found, whatever it may be. Or if you don't know what it is, just post a picture of it and maybe we can help you identify it. If you go out the next day after it's been sitting out there all night long and you don't see much action in here, leave it out another night or move it to a different spot. You're gonna wanna place this somewhere where you think there's gonna be a lot of activity of insects or bugs. So maybe that is in, if you have a little garden, maybe that's in there, underneath a tree, or anywhere where you think there's gonna be a lot of action throughout the night of things crawling along that could potentially go down in there. That's where you're gonna wanna place it. So now we have the two, I made 2 traps from the 2 examples that I had. I'm gonna put one of my traps in my raised bed here with my broccoli. And we're gonna wanna dig a hole, like I said, deep enough to where that trap lays even with the soil. Now I had mentioned you don't want it too deep because, you know, luckily my raised beds, the soil's pretty moist. But you know, if you're trying to do this in your backyard or somewhere where the soil's really hard, it might take a while for you and your and one of your parents or whoever to help you dig that hole. So we have one trap there. I put some little kind of like nuts and granola bar at the bottom of it. The last trap I had some fruit, and so I'm gonna see if this attracts some different stuff. So let's go over here. We're gonna do the other one over near this retention pond, where there's a lot of during the summer when there's water in it, there's lots of frogs, there's lots of birds that hang out in here, all sorts of stuff. Right now it's dried up, so we're gonna see what is hanging out in here during this time of the year. Oops. And we're gonna wanna fill in around the cup. That way any critters that come walking don't slip down into there. We wanna make sure we direct them right into our little trap. Cool. There you go, that's our second trap. Awesome, well thank you all so much for joining me in this lesson. I hope you had as much fun as I did out here looking for bugs, looking for insects, looking for creepy crawly things. You know, as an adult, I still enjoy it just as much as I did when I was your age. That was definitely one of my favorite pastimes during the summers, and any chance I had to get outside was just, you know, lifting up a log and seeing what was underneath it, or a rock or a stone. Now, it is important to remember that, you know, as we had touched on in this video, bugs and insects and these things are really vital and important aspects of all sorts of ecosystems. So, you know, as much as you might be scared of an insect that you see, if it's in your home or outside, just appreciate it from a distance. If you're scared of it, you know, there's no need to squish it or to kill it. You know, they all provide a really vital role in the life of something else. You know, so thank you guys so much. I hope you enjoyed yourself, and we'll see you next week.